My name is Isla Brennan. And if you had asked anyone in my family what I would become, they would have laughed. I am sitting in a polished conference room, wearing a plain black blouse. The chairs around me cost more than my monthly rent. The table is so shiny I can almost see my own reflection staring back at me, tired, tense, unsure why I was even called here. My parents, Warren and Diane Brennan, are finalizing the sale of Brennan and Company, the logistics company they built over 30 years. 30 years of early mornings and late nights. Family dinners where the business always sat at the head of the table. Not me. Never me. I was invited today, they said, to watch how real adults work. Those were my father's exact words. Not to participate, not to sign anything, just to sit quietly and be grateful for the lesson. My father barely glances at me as he lifts his pen. My mother smirks at something the lead buyer says and laughs a little too loudly. I press my hands flat against my thighs and say nothing. Then the buyer pauses. He frowns at the document in his hand. Wait, he says slowly. Why is the company registered under her name? Every head in the room turns. And they all turn to me. I feel the heat rise up my neck before I even understand what is happening. The buyer, a composed man named Mr. Okafor, holds the document up slightly, as if showing the room a puzzle piece that simply does not fit. My father sets down his pen. That's impossible, he says, with the flat certainty he uses whenever he tells me my ideas won't work. My mother leans forward. There must be a printing error. Check it again. The lawyer, a careful man named Mr. Adler, does not check it again. He already knows what is there. He flips through the stack slowly, his glasses sliding down his nose, page after page rustling in the silence. The room holds its breath. Then Mr. Adler looks up. The company ownership transfer from 15 years ago, he says, each word landing like a stone dropped into still water. List your daughter as the sole legal owner. My parents stare at me like I have just pulled something out from under them. I stare at the table. Because here is what no one in that room could have expected, least of all me. I had no idea. Not even a flicker of an idea. My hands are trembling. My mind has gone completely blank. All I have is my name on a document I have never seen before in my life. My father's voice cuts through the silence first. She did this. He points at me, and two of the buyers shift uncomfortably in their seats. She has been trying to get her hands on this company for years. I didn't. I start. Don't. His voice is sharp enough to cut glass. My mother stands slightly. This is fraud. She manipulated the records. Mr. Adler holds up one hand. He is the kind of calm that comes from having seen far worse. Mr. Brennan, with respect, the transfer was executed legally, through proper channels, 15 years ago. Your daughter would have been 17 years old at the time. 17. I barely had a bank account at 17. There is no evidence of manipulation, Mr. Adler continues. What this represents, legally, is a valid and standing transfer of ownership. He pauses, and the pause carries more weight than anything else said in that room. Which means the company was never yours to sell. One of the buyers quietly closes his folder. Another glances at his colleague. No one speaks. And just like that, in a room where I came to be invisible, everything reverses. The humiliation I walked in carrying, the one my parents packed for me like luggage, turns around and finds a new direction entirely. Mr. Adler asks for a moment and spreads the documents across the table like a map. He traces the timeline out loud. 15 years ago, Brennan and Company had hit serious trouble. A supplier lawsuit threatened to seize company assets. At the same time, a tax restructuring had left the business dangerously exposed. My father had needed to move ownership quickly, somewhere safe, somewhere no creditor could easily reach. I watch my father's face as Mr. Adler speaks. The color drains from it slowly, like water leaving a bath. The transfer would have required a signature, Mr. Adler says, looking directly at my father now. From both parties. My father says nothing. He is staring at a fixed point on the table. My mother says his name quietly. Warren! He closes his eyes, and in that small gesture, I watch the memory surface. A late night, a kitchen table, a stack of papers pushed across the surface. Someone must have said, sign here. Just temporary. It won't take long. And a teenage girl, eager to feel useful for once, would have signed without a single question. Because that was always what I did. Whatever they needed. No questions. Just trying, endlessly trying, to finally be enough. I was enough. I just never knew it was legal. The full picture takes another 20 minutes to piece together. When Brennan and Company was drowning in legal and financial pressure 15 years ago, my parents' accountant, a man named Mr. Fitch, long since retired, had recommended a simple strategy. Move the company into the name of someone with no financial footprint, no assets, no legal history, someone too young and too invisible to attract any unwanted attention. They chose me, not because they trusted me, not because they believed in me, but because I was nobody, because I had nothing, because, in their quiet and consistent estimation, I would never have anything. Their exact logic, the logic behind every snide comment at dinner, every sigh at my report cards, every eye roll at my ambitions, had been turned into a legal maneuver. My uselessness, as they saw it, was actually useful. They transferred the company into my name. Temporarily, they told themselves, just long enough for the lawsuit to settle and the tax issue to clear. They would transfer it back once things were stable. But the accountant retired. The paperwork sat in a file. Life moved forward. And they forgot. They never thought to check. Why would they? They were absolutely certain that nothing important would ever be in my name. Mr. Okafor does not raise his voice. He doesn't need to. He sits back in his chair, folds his hands carefully on the table, and speaks in a tone that is somehow more alarming than shouting. Let me be sure I understand this correctly, he says. We entered into a purchase agreement with Warren and Diane Brennan for the acquisition of Brennan and Company. Mr. Adler nods. And those two individuals do not legally own the company. That is correct. Which means our agreement is unenforceable as written. Also correct. A beat of complete silence. Mr. Okafor turns his head slowly. He does not look at my parents. He looks at me. His eyes are steady, direct, assessing. Not unkind, but absolutely serious. So the question becomes a simple one, he says. He tilts his head slightly. Miss Brennan, do you intend to sell? The room contracts around that question. I feel every pair of eyes pressing on me like weight. The buyers, the lawyers, my parents, my whole life. My mother's mouth opens. My father grips the arm of his chair until his knuckles lighten. And I, the daughter who was brought here only to watch, am suddenly the only person in the room whose answer matters. I say nothing yet, but the silence is mine. For the first time, it belongs entirely to me. My parents recover quickly. They always do. Before I can form a single thought, my father turns to me. His voice drops to the careful register he uses when he wants to sound reasonable. Isla, sign the papers. We'll talk at home. My mother adds, you don't understand what's happening here. Let us handle it. Same as always. But then something unexpected happens. Mr. Okafor's lawyer, a composed woman named Ms. Achabi, rises quietly and steps toward me. She leans close enough that only I can hear. Miss Brennan, she says softly, before you do a single thing, I need to ask you something. She holds my gaze without blinking. Do you have any idea what your company is actually worth? My company? She says it so naturally, as if I have known it my whole life, as if I have been sitting at the head of this table the entire time and simply forgot to look up. I shake my head. She opens her folder and slides a single sheet across the table toward me. A valuation report. She taps the bottom figure once with one finger, then quietly steps back. I look down at the page. I read the number. Then I read it again. My vision goes slightly white at the edges. I have to read the number 3 times before it stays still. The price my parents had agreed to, the figure Mr. Okafor's firm negotiated with them over months, was $4,200,000. A number my parents were apparently thrilled about, ready to retire on. The actual independent market valuation of Brennan and Company was $47 million. I sit with that gap in silence. $4 million versus 47. My parents were about to sell my company for less than 1/10 of what it was worth. I understand why. They were exhausted. The business had struggled for 3 years. They wanted out cleanly and quickly, and a confident buyer with a fast offer had come along at exactly the right moment. They took it without looking deeper, because that was always their way. Take the fast, certain thing. Don't wait. Don't look too hard. Move on. I fold the valuation report once and set it on my side of the table. My father is watching me carefully now. I can feel him searching for the daughter who always backed down. The one who believed him when he said he knew best. She is still somewhere inside me. But she is not the one sitting in this chair. And she is not the one holding this piece of paper. The moment the buyers step out to make a call, my parents move toward me. I have seen this before, the flanking. Both sides at once, the way they always came when they needed me to do something I didn't want to do. My father's voice is low and controlled. Isla, this is still a family matter. We built that company. Every year of it. I say nothing. We'll split the money, my mother says, as if she is offering something precious from her own pocket. Fairly. We can work something out. I think about my 16th birthday, forgotten, then half remembered 2 days later. I think about calling my mother after my first job offer, hands shaking with excitement, and her asking whether the salary was at least something decent. I think about every small achievement I ever held out toward them, hoping just once to see pride, and finding only indifference. I think about being 17, sitting at this very kind of table, signing papers I was never told to read. My mother puts her hand over mine. Her voice softens the way it does when she wants something. You're still our daughter, she says. That has to mean something. I look at her hand. It does, I say quietly. It means a great deal. I do not pull my hand away, but I do not sign anything either. Mr. Okafor finds me near the window during the short break. The afternoon light comes in flat and cool across the carpet. He doesn't waste words. Our original agreement was made under false premises, with people who could not legally accept it, he says. That deal is void. I understand, but our interest in the company is not. A pause. If you're willing to negotiate directly, without the complications your parents have introduced, we are prepared to make you a significantly better offer. He names a figure. Not 47 million. But far above 4.2. I breathe slowly and let the number settle. I have never been in a room where someone made me an offer. I have been the person who sends applications and waits. The person overlooked at job interviews and birthday dinners and family conversations about the future. And now a serious man is standing across from me, treating me as the most important person in the room. Because I am. Something settles in my chest. Quiet and solid, like a door finally closing on a long draft. Give me 24 hours, I say. He nods once. Of course. I watch him walk away. I hold all the power. And for the first time in my life, I am not going to give it away quickly just to stop someone from being disappointed in me. My parents find out about the private conversation faster than I expected. My mother catches me in the hallway before I reach the elevator. Her voice is low and tight. You think you can go around us? They came to me, I say. This is our company, Isla. 30 years. The documents disagree with you. My father appears at her shoulder, slightly breathless. We'll take you to court. We'll challenge the transfer. We'll argue you were a minor who couldn't consent. He sounds certain. He sounds like the man who always knew best, always had the answer, always talked over everyone else in the room until they stopped trying. But then Mr. Adler steps out behind them. He looks at my father with the expression of a doctor delivering a diagnosis he has delivered before. Mr. Brennan, he says simply, I would strongly advise against that. Why? Because the transfer was initiated at your instruction, through your accountant, with your full knowledge. The documentation is thorough and clear. A measured pause. You would not win. The certainty in my father's face, that lifelong, unshakable certainty, drains away one layer at a time. His mouth closes, and for the first time in my memory, Warren Brennan simply has nothing left to say. I did not know my brother Edmund was coming. He walks in during the afternoon session, still wearing his jacket from whatever meeting he left early. He shakes my father's hand, kisses my mother on the cheek, and sits down across from me without making eye contact. Edmund is 5 years older. He calls home on Sundays. He is, by every visible measure, the child my parents actually wanted. Isla, he says, finally looking at me with an expression I can only call careful disappointment. Do the right thing here. What's the right thing? I ask. Sign what needs signing. Let Mom and Dad close this deal. Stop making it complicated. I study him for a moment. Did they tell you about the actual valuation? The 47 million. He shifts slightly. Edmund, my mother begins. That figure is. Were you promised part of the sale money? I ask him. No one answers. But my brother's jaw tightens just barely. Just enough. There it is. They had already divided the payout before I even knew I owned anything. My name was on the deed, and my share was not even a line in their plan. They carved up what was mine and handed pieces to everyone else. And then they called me ungrateful for noticing. I close my eyes briefly, then open them. I see, I say. And I do. While my parents meet with their personal lawyer, Ms. Achebe gives me access to the company files gathered during the buyer's due diligence process. Standard procedure, she says. I have never looked at these documents before. No one ever thought to show them to me. I start reading. Buried inside an email chain dated 8 months ago, long before anyone told me a sale was even being considered, I find what I am looking for. The thread is between my father and the acquisition team. It maps out the entire plan, the timeline, the deal structure, every round of negotiation. They had been building toward this for nearly a year, quietly, while I was going about my ordinary life knowing absolutely nothing. I scroll to the bottom of one long message. My father, responding to a question about potential internal complications, writes, "No complications. Isla is dead weight who will never notice anything. Dead weight who will never notice anything." I set the tablet down on the table. I do not slam it. I do not speak. I sit completely still and breathe through what rises in my chest. Not just hurt, but something older and heavier finally reaching the surface. Clarity. They built their entire exit plan on the certainty that I would never look closely enough to see it. They used my invisibility as infrastructure. They were almost right. I call Ms. Achebe that evening. She picks up on the second ring. I've read everything, I say. And I want to move forward, but I need you to understand something first. I pause, choosing words carefully. I'm not doing this out of anger. I'm not trying to punish anyone. I know, she says. The company is legally mine. Not because of a trick. Not because I planned any of this. Just because the documents say so. And after everything I've seen today, the real valuation, the emails, the deal they nearly closed without a single word to me, I think it's time I acted like what I actually am. A short silence. Thoughtful, not uncomfortable. What do you want to do? She asks. I want to negotiate directly with Mr. Okafor's team. I say. Without my parents at the table. That's your right. I also don't want to sell everything. I want to restructure. Partial sale, retained stake, a real role going forward. She considers this. It's a more complex negotiation. I know. I'm not afraid of complicated. A pause. Are you sure you're ready for this? I think about the girl who signed papers at 17 without reading them. I think about the woman brought to this meeting just to watch. I've been ready for a long time, I say. Nobody thought to ask me before now. My parents are told the next morning. Mr. Adler delivers the news without drama. I am proceeding with my own negotiation. The original agreement is void. Any future transaction will involve me as the sole legal owner of Brennan and Company. My father stands up so fast his chair rolls back. You are destroying this family. His voice fills the room. Everything we built. Everything we gave up. And you're tearing it apart because of paperwork. My mother's voice cracks. I gave you everything, Isla. You owe us your life. I have heard versions of this my whole life. Every time I fell short of their standard. Every time I failed to be the exact shape of daughter they required. Every time I reached toward them hoping for one moment of pride and found nothing. You owe us. That sentence is the oldest thing in our family. Mr. Okafor, still seated, speaks into the room's tension without raising his voice at all. Mr. and Mrs. Brennan, he says, with respect, you are not the owners of this company. You were not the owners when you signed that agreement. Whatever your daughter chooses to do with her asset is entirely her decision. He looks at me briefly, then back at them. My parents look at me, truly look at me, for what feels like the first time. I look back, steady, quiet, still. The negotiations take 4 days. I am not a businesswoman by training. I have a communications degree my parents called a waste of tuition and a few years of mid-level project management experience. I am not the person any of them would have chosen for this, but I listen carefully. I ask every question I need to ask, without embarrassment. Ms. Achebe explains what I don't understand, and she does it without impatience. I am a fast learner when someone treats me like I am capable of learning. The buyers want the distribution network, the logistics contracts, the regional routes, the driver agreements. That is what they came for. The real estate attached to the company is less important to them. So I restructure the deal around that. I agreed to sell 70% of the operational business at a figure well above the original offer. I retain 30% ownership as a stakeholder with a voice on major decisions. I keep the 2 largest property assets outright. When Ms. Achebe walks me through the final numbers, I stand at the window and let it settle over me. I will leave this deal with more than my parents would have earned from their original sale. And I will still own part of what they built. My father's plan was to cash out and vanish into retirement. My plan is to stay. 3 weeks after the restructured deal is agreed, my parents file a lawsuit. I am not surprised. I had half expected it. Their claim is that the original transfer was made under duress. That I, as a 17-year-old minor, could not have legally consented to it. That the document should be considered invalid from the beginning, returning ownership to them. Their lawyer files on a Tuesday. By Thursday, Mr. Adler has responded with a 40-page counterfiling. It includes the original instruction memo from my father to the accountant, Mr. Fitch, explicitly requesting the transfer. It includes 3 years of tax filings that treated the transfer as legitimate and complete. It includes correspondence between my parents' own financial advisors confirming the ownership structure. Most damaging is a single email my father sent to his bank 5 years after the transfer, long after I was no longer a minor, referencing the company as held in Isla's name for structural reasons. They knew. 5 years later, they still knew. And they said nothing. The lawsuit is withdrawn 11 days after it is filed. No statement. No apology. Just silence. Which is the closest my parents have ever come to admitting they were wrong about anything. The deal closes on a cool Thursday morning in late autumn. I wear the same plain black blouse from the first meeting. Ms. Achebe notices and smiles slightly. I think she understands. The signing takes under an hour. Mr. Okafor shakes my hand at the end, a real handshake, the kind that means something, and says, "Welcome to the table, Miss Brennan." I stand at the window afterward, looking at the street below. People moving quickly, heads down, going about their ordinary days. I used to watch the world like this and feel like I was always on the outside of something I couldn't name. The wire confirmation arrives on my phone 40 minutes later. I stare at it a long time. I think about every job I didn't get. Every dinner where Edmund was praised and I was barely acknowledged. Every time my mother said some people simply aren't built for this, in that gentle, final tone that was somehow worse than anger. I think about a 17-year-old girl sitting at a kitchen table, signing her name on papers she was never told to read, and walking away feeling like she had finally done something useful. She had. She just didn't know what it was yet. I put my phone in my pocket and step out into the cool morning air. My parents call 3 weeks after the closing. My mother speaks. My father is somewhere in the background but doesn't come to the phone. She tells me I've destroyed the family, that Edmund won't speak to me, that everything they worked for is gone because of my coldness and my selfishness and my failure to understand what family really means. I listen to all of it without interrupting. When she finishes, the line goes quiet. Then I speak. I remember being 12 years old, I say, and coming home with first place in a regional writing competition. I had worked on that essay for 2 months. You were on the phone when I walked in. You waved me off and told me to put it on the counter. She says nothing. I remember calling you from a car park when I got my first job offer, so excited I was shaking. You asked if the salary was at least something decent. When I told you, you said you hoped I wouldn't embarrass you. Silence. I remember being 17, sitting at the kitchen table. You put a pen in my hand and said be useful for once. And I signed without asking a single question because I just wanted to matter to you. A long pause. I didn't destroy anything, Mum, I say softly. I just finally stopped believing the story you told me about myself. I let that sit for a moment. Maybe I finally amounted to something. 7 months later, I go back. Mr. Okafor's firm has renovated the main office. The old reception area, which always smelled like dust and worn carpet, is now bright and open. The company has a new name, a new identity, a new direction built on what was already there. They invited me for the official opening. As a stakeholder, as a partner, I arrive a little early. A team member offers to walk me through the updated space. We move through the new operations floor, the logistics hub, the airy meeting rooms with wide windows that let in real light. Near the entrance, there is a feature wall. It tells the company's history, the founding years, the growth timeline, the transition into its current form. I slow when I reach the ownership section. It lists the original founders, then the transition period, then the current structure. I read my name, not in the footnotes, not in the small print. Right there, clearly, as part of a story from beginning to present. A member of the new staff glances at the plaque, and then at my face, making the connection. She smiles. Is that you? Yes, I say. And I mean it in every possible way. The daughter who would never amount to anything is standing in the building that bears her name. Her name has been on the wall for 15 years. She just finally came back to read it,